Welcome to Conspiracies Condensed, where history's most controversial secrets are uncovered, analyzed, and exposed. From government cover-ups to declassified experiments, we dive deep into the conspiracies that turned out to be true. During the Cold War, we feared tanks and missiles, but the real weapon was fear. Hidden networks, false attacks, and political sabotage, coordinated not by enemies, but by our own allies. This is Operation Gladio, the secret war fought in the shadows of Europe. Buried in the ruins of post-war Europe was a secret so explosive it wouldn't be fully uncovered for decades. Known as Operation Gladio, it was a covert NATO initiative to build stay-behind armies in case of a Soviet invasion. But what started as a defensive plan allegedly turned into something darker. A clandestine network involved in political manipulation, false flag attacks, and psychological warfare. Whistleblowers would later claim these groups didn't just prepare for war, they waged a secret one. This is the true story of Operation Gladio, a conspiracy once dismissed as fiction, but ultimately confirmed by prime ministers, declassified documents, and a trail of blood stretching across Cold War Europe. After World War II, Europe was vulnerable. The Soviet Union's growing power cast a long shadow, and the fear of communist expansion was everywhere. In response, the United States, United Kingdom, and NATO allies devised a plan to resist any future invasion. The idea was simple: build secret armies that would stay behind if Soviet tanks rolled in. These units were trained in sabotage, guerrilla tactics, and underground communication. At first glance, it seemed like a defensive insurance policy. But very few people knew they existed, not even elected officials. These networks were highly compartmentalized, operating in complete secrecy. That secrecy would later be exploited, not just for defense, but to control domestic politics under the cover of anti-communism. Italy's version of the program was called Gladio, named after the Roman short sword. Dozens of other countries had similar code names: SDRA-8 in Belgium, Project 26 in Switzerland, and ROC in the Netherlands. These groups received weapons, money, and training, often from the CIA and British MI6. Hidden arms caches were buried across the countryside, ready for wartime resistance. But instead of waiting for a Soviet invasion, some units allegedly turned inward. They began monitoring left-wing politicians, infiltrating unions, and collecting intelligence on student groups. In some cases, former fascists and ultra-nationalists were recruited. Gladio, once a shield, had become a sword, and it would soon be used domestically. As Europe entered the 1970s, political violence surged. Bombings, kidnappings, and assassinations were blamed on radical left-wing extremists. But something didn't add up. In Italy, a disturbing theory emerged: a strategy of tension. The idea was simple: create fear and chaos, then blame it on communists. This fear would push voters toward conservative governments and justify police crackdowns. Years later, whistleblowers and declassified documents linked some of these terror attacks to elements within the Gladio network. The lines between enemy and ally blurred. Intelligence agencies were accused of allowing or even facilitating violence to serve geopolitical goals. Democracy itself became a pawn in a secret war. On August 2nd, 1980, a powerful bomb exploded inside Bologna's central train station. It killed 85 people and injured over 200 more, Italy's deadliest terror attack. Initially, authorities blamed leftist groups, but investigators later traced the attack to neo-fascists, with suspected ties to Gladio and military intelligence. The case remains shrouded in mystery. Some believe it was a false flag, an intentional act of terror designed to frame the political left and destabilize Italy's government. Accused operatives were convicted, but the broader network that enabled the attack was never fully exposed. Bologna became a symbol of manipulated fear, where ordinary people paid the price for an invisible war waged in secret. The truth began to surface in 1990. Italian Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti publicly confirmed the existence of Operation Gladio. He admitted that Italy maintained a secret army, coordinated by NATO and supported by American intelligence. The revelation shocked Europe. Belgium, France, Germany, Greece, and Turkey were all suspected of having similar networks. Some governments launched internal investigations. Others denied everything. But records, testimonies, and buried weapons caches told a different story. The European Parliament condemned the operations, demanding transparency. But NATO refused to comment. The CIA remained silent. What had started as a defensive measure had evolved into a political tool, and it had finally been dragged into the light. Despite public outrage, accountability was scarce. Many politicians denied knowledge. Files were destroyed or sealed. Journalists who pursued the story were silenced or ridiculed. A few Gladio operatives came forward, offering testimonies. But without official cooperation, investigations stalled. In the end, no NATO official or intelligence officer was ever prosecuted. Gladio became a historical footnote, mentioned in obscure reports, ignored in classrooms. But its implications are enormous. A covert military network operating on democratic soil, influencing elections, and possibly manipulating acts of terror. It was never just a conspiracy theory. It was a geopolitical reality with a paper trail and a body count. Gladio was a product of its time, an era of Cold War paranoia and global power struggles. But the strategy it employed, fear, manipulation, secret influence, hasn't disappeared. Today, the tools have evolved. Cyber warfare, surveillance, disinformation campaigns. The question isn't just whether Gladio was real. It was. The real question is, did it ever end? Or did it adapt, rebrand, and embed itself deeper into modern systems? When truth is buried beneath decades of silence, we must ask, who really pulls the strings in a time of peace? And when democracy is threatened, how will we know it's happening again? Gladio was real, its tactics were confirmed, but its legacy remains hidden, classified, denied, and ignored. If this is what was uncovered, what else remains buried? Subscribe for more truths history tried to erase, and drop a comment. What conspiracy should we expose next? This broadcast is ending. Your real journey is just beginning. 2 codes, 2 keys. Which truth will you unlock?